All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
On October 30th, 1975, 15-year-old Martha Moxley vanished after a night of teenage mischief in the wealthy neighborhood of Greenwich, Connecticut. The night before Halloween is known as Mischief Night. It's where teens go out, they egg houses, they toilet paper, they do all of the little teen pranks that they love to do. And Martha went out with friends that night, only to be found the next morning brutally beaten to death beneath a tree in her own yard. A golf club that was used to beat Moxley so brutally that the end of the club broke off. That club was later linked to the home of a man named Rushton Skakel. Now, Rushton Skakel was the brother of Ethel Skakel Kennedy, a.k.a. Robert Kennedy Sr.'s wife. So there is a Kennedy connection here. Police learned that Rushton Skakel's sons, 17-year-old Tommy and 15-year-old Michael, had pretty much been fighting over Martha, like summer I turned pretty style. And with that, they felt pretty certain that one of the boys had to be responsible for Martha's murder. But of course, the money, power, and privilege that comes with being a cousin of the Kennedys didn't make the police's investigation easy. It would stretch on for decades, filled with conflicting alibis, changing stories, and shocking admissions as police, journalists, and prosecutors tried to piece together what happened that night in Belhaven. Decades later, after a sensational trial, a conviction, and the later overturning of that conviction, then the reinstating of that conviction, and then another overturning of that conviction, the question still lingers. Did the Kennedy family's privilege shield a murderer from justice? Well, this is a Trial by Podcast, so we'll let you be the judge.
REI Co-op presents a perfect outdoor moment with the perfect gift.
Woo!
Picture this. You're ripping with your favorite person. Bluebird skies, blower powder, and frankly, you're skiing like legends.
So sick. Another lap?
Thanks to REI's curation, from lid to sticks, you nailed the gift.
No way. How'd you know?
Does it get more perfect than that? Give without guessing. Shop in store or visit rei.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana makes car selling fast and easy from start to finish. Enter your license plate or VIN and get a real offer in seconds, down to the penny. If you accept, Carvana will come pick up your car from your driveway. Or you can drop it off at one of our car vending machines. Either way, you get paid instantly. It's fast, transparent, and 100% online. Car selling that saves your time. That's Carvana.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
If we knew more about our sleep, what would we do differently? Would we go to bed at a consistent time or take steps to reduce interruptions to our sleep? With the all-new Sleep Score, Apple Watch measures your bedtime consistency, interruptions, and sleep duration. Then, every morning it combines these factors into an easy-to-understand score from 1 to 100. So you'll know how to take the quality of your sleep from good to excellent. Introducing the new Sleep Score on Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
What am I drinking? What is this?
Oh, that, my friend, is a Saint Germain Spritz.
It's delicious.
Now, if you know of the Aperol Spritz, which I feel like we all should by now, you know an Aperol Spritz slaps. But a Saint Germain Spritz, when Emily and I... Oh, did you finish it already?
Yeah.
We just started recording.
Well, you handed it to me when I walked in the door.
That was 8 minutes ago, dude.
I didn't know there was a timer.
Wait, let's get you another one before we continue. Hold on, let me pause it. Okay, now we are recording again.
Lovely.
So I don't know if I ever fully answered your question, Sailor. When Emily and I were in Paris, we started drinking these Saint Germain spritzes. And Saint Germain, it's like Saint Germain elderflower liqueur. I don't think I made the cocktail right because all I did was put Prosecco with the Saint Germain liqueur. But it's fantastic. So I hope you enjoy, my friend.
I loved the first one.
Yeah,
the second one is
drank
just...
it in 8 minutes flat. Okay, welcome back to the show, everybody. If this is your first time here, my name is Kelsey. If this intro sounds a little bit off, it's because it's the first time I'm doing it this way. And today I have a very special guest host, my friend Taylor. Taylor, say hi to the peeps.
Hi, peeps. I'm so excited to be here today.
And if Saint Germain wanted to sponsor the podcast, I would be okay with that personally. How about you, Tay?
Personally, yes, after my
I already
first
did
sip.
it. I knew 5 seconds in, I already called you Tay. I'm like, I know I'm going to say it on accident. And I'm just going to piss her off.
It's okay. We've been friends long enough that I'll let slip here and there.
It's 7 p.m. on a Friday night because Taylor's an angel for coming to do this with me on a Friday night. We are about to record hopefully 2 episodes. We'll see how it goes. Now, I don't want to take too long before we get into the story, but just a couple quick things. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, if you could make sure you are following us wherever you're listening or subscribed wherever you're listening, that really helps us out a lot. And also, if you could leave us a 5-star rating. I saw that today we just broke over 900 ratings on Spotify. So it's probably something similar on Apple Podcasts. I listen on Spotify, so that's what I pay more attention to. And I would really, really, really love to hit 1,000 reviews before the end of the year. So if you guys can drop a 5-star review, especially on Spotify, but anywhere you're listening, it does really help the podcast. So I would very much appreciate it. And what Emily and I have done in the past is we pick a couple like random things. Like if your name is Taylor, we're going to need you to drop a 5-star rating.
It's a pretty common name.
We pick common things on purpose. If you have almond-shaped nails, we're going to need you to drop us a 5-star rating. Taylor, hit me with a random thing. Anything in the world.
If you work in healthcare.
Drop us a 5-star rating.
Because I was boasting about your podcast to providers at my job today.
Aw, thank you so much. And also, if you work in healthcare, thank you. So today, I am going to tell you the story of the murder of Martha Moxley, which happened in 1975. And I said I was going to be quick about my intro. I do want to preface this story. If you are not interested in hearing a personal anecdote that is directly related to the story, I will put a timestamp in the show notes of where you can skip to exactly where the story starts. But the reason I picked this story today is because I'm looking for some friends to guest host a little bit here and there. And Taylor lives right down the street from me pretty much. So I'm like, Taylor, we got to get you on the podcast. But here's the thing is Taylor does not listen to podcasts and she doesn't do anything with true crime, like no shows really or podcasts or anything.
I get enough crime at work.
Right. Taylor's a nurse, so she deals with enough at work. I was thinking, I'm like, what story can I do? I picked this one because I have this theory that this is why I'm so interested in true crime. And I'll tell you why. There is a movie that is based off this story. And in the movie, the main character narrates the whole movie. And she is playing Martha Moxley, the murder victim. And she is telling the story of her murder, like after her death, basically. Like as you would assume it's like from the afterlife. And I don't know if I've ever like told my parents this story, so they might be listening, hearing the story for the first time. But when I was 7 years old, we were at a family friend's house and all the kids were supposed to go to bed. And the parents were watching a movie in the basement. And I couldn't sleep and they're watching this movie. And it's like a scary movie, right? And I go downstairs. I'm like, can I stay down here? I can't sleep. And my mom was like, you can stay down here, but only if you go to sleep because like you can't watch this movie. So I pretended to fucking fall asleep. And boy, did I not fall asleep. And you know, I'm just like with one eye open, like peeking at this movie. And it is a very graphic movie. And I'm telling you, I had nightmares for months. And I don't think I ever told my parents about it when I was a kid because I was scared I was going to get in trouble because they said I had to go, like I could only stay down there if I went to sleep. And then I pretended to go to sleep. But when you hear this case and what it's about, I remember being distraught over what happened in this film and what I saw. I don't want to give parts of the story away, but I did want to lead with that. As you're listening to this, picture 7 or 8-year-old me. So on the evening of October 30th, 1975, 15-year-old Martha Elizabeth Moxley left her home in the gated Bellhaven neighborhood of Greenwich, Connecticut. This was a wealthy coastal town known for its manicured lawns and its exclusivity. In Greenwich, the night before Halloween is what they call Mischief Night, where the neighborhood teens disperse to wreak mild havoc on the town through vandalism and pranks. So, of course, Martha had to go run rampant with all of her friends in the neighborhood that night. Martha, described by friends as outgoing, athletic, and kind-hearted, was a sophomore at Greenwich High School and part of a close-knit group of teenagers who often hung out just outside on the quiet streets of Bellhaven. And so that night, Martha leaves home around 7:30 p.m., and she tells her mother, Dorothy, that she would be out with friends for a few hours. The teens had a lengthy to-do list for the evening, which reportedly included ding-dong ditching, toilet papering houses, like they're throwing toilet paper over the houses, they're egging houses, and in between all of these like pranks that they're pulling, they're just hanging out in each other's houses, in the yards, in the basements, things like that. And all of these activities included the home of the Skakel family, who lived directly across the street from the Moxleys. Now, the Skakels were a large, prominent family related by marriage to the Kennedys, America's unofficial royal family. To clarify their connection, it helps to relate them to two of the most recognizable names today. So I'm going to talk about RFK Jr., who we know today, and President John F. Kennedy. So RFK Jr.'s parents were RFK Sr., Robert F. Kennedy Sr., and Ethel Skakel Kennedy. Ethel had a brother named Rushton Skakel, who, together with his wife Anne, had several children, including two sons, Tommy and Michael Skakel. So Tommy and Michael are friends with Martha. They live across the street. They are RFK Jr.'s first cousins, okay? However, because Ethel's husband, Robert Kennedy, was a Skakel by marriage, President JFK was not their blood relative. He was kind of like an uncle by marriage, okay? So they're not like from the Kennedy bloodline, to put it really archaically, but they are related to them by marriage. Now, despite all of this, the Skakel name carried a kind of secondhand Kennedy prestige with it. There was a reverb effect of influence and wealth that loomed large in 1970s America. The Kennedys were not just politicians. They were seen as cultural symbols. The media had transformed them into the American version of royalty. They were glamorous, they were articulate, and they were photographed endlessly. They were like the political Kardashians of the 1960s and 70s, is the way that I'm going to put it as someone who was not alive during the time and doesn't really know what it felt like. But by 1975, the Kennedy family was both revered and haunted by tragedy, because by that time, President John F. Kennedy had been assassinated just 12 years earlier, and Robert F. Kennedy had also been assassinated in 1968 during his own presidential campaign. The nation's grief and fascination with the family made their every move front page news. Rumors of a Kennedy curse were already spreading. Have you heard about this, the Kennedy curse?
Yes, definitely heard of this phrase.
Okay. So everyone's already talking about this Kennedy curse, and it just keeps piling on because in July 1969, Senator Edward Ted Kennedy, most people know him as Ted, he had driven his car off a narrow bridge on Chappaquiddick Island, Massachusetts, plunging into a tidal pond and killing his 28-year-old passenger, Mary Jo Kopechne, a campaign ad who had once worked for Robert Kennedy. Ted then escaped the submerged vehicle and returned to his hotel, failing to report the accident to police until the next morning, nearly 10 hours later. So he drove his car off a bridge into this giant pond with a 28-year-old woman in the passenger seat, and she never emerged from the water, and he just didn't call anyone until the next morning. So this was a huge scandal because the next morning, Kopechne's body was found still trapped inside the car, and the incident ignited outrage and disbelief. The senator's actions and the suggestion of an attempted cover-up by political allies and law enforcement tarnished the family's image of integrity. The Kennedys were supposed to be seen as like larger than life. Almost like a religious figure is how I see it. Not literally, but almost like this religious figure of I'm still human, but also I'm above you in this way, and you should be looking to me for guidance. And then one of the Kennedys goes and accidentally kills this woman, but still kills this woman and doesn't report it immediately. So Ted Kennedy did end up pleading guilty to leaving the scene of an accident, and he received a suspended sentence, which to my knowledge means he didn't have to serve any time for it. But the scandal effectively ended his presidential ambitions, and it fueled the growing sense that tragedy and controversy followed the Kennedys wherever they went. In the meantime, RFK's widow, Ethel Kennedy, was busy raising 11 children on her own, trying to maintain the family's public image of the Catholic virtue and of resilience. Because if you guys know anything about the Kennedys, I was just listening to podcasts about it a couple weeks ago. It was about JFK and Jackie Kennedy, and they were talking about when JFK was running for president. This was something I didn't know. It was very controversial because he was a Catholic, and people didn't want a Catholic president. I think they wanted, I don't know if it was Protestant. I don't know. But the whole Kennedy dynasty is very, very interesting. Their role in politics, their role in culture, like think about JFK and Marilyn Monroe, all of those sorts of things. And by the way, JFK was a slimy bastard, okay? I'm not talking about his politics. I'm talking about as a husband, he was a slimy bastard. But it's really interesting to hear about how the Kennedy family has changed through the generations, because I would say they're very different now, which most
it kind of makes me feel bad for the rest of the family, like living in that shadow. Like for those who just want to be a regular person, but still being held to such a standard by the media, because I mean, nobody's perfect, right?
Right.
Like things happen, but I mean, being in the eyes of the media, it just makes me feel a little bit for people that aren't trying to be involved in those kind of things.
Yeah. I think they're like it's probably not all of them, but I think most of them are in politics. Like it seems like really passed down through the generations. It's really, really interesting. So against that backdrop, against the Kennedy dynasty backdrop, the Skakels lived in a world of privilege fueled by the family's fortune in coal, oil, and transportation industries. Because so one side of the family is like married off to the Kennedys. The other side of the family comes from a long line of rich motherfuckers who got rich on coal, oil, and transportation. It's privilege on both sides. There's political power and wealth and fame on one, and then there is money, 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 money on the other. At the head of the family was Rushton Skakel Sr., a businessman whose father, George Skakel, had founded the private corporation Great Lakes Carbon, one of the largest U.S. privately held coal industrial firms. The family lived in a large Tudor-style estate across the street from the Moxleys, and their social circles spanned elite prep schools, summer homes, influence in business, politics. These are kids that are going to they're going to boarding school and stuff. Not literally, I'm talking about this lifestyle, but these are, the average person cannot imagine this lifestyle. And I hate to say it because I try to be careful about I don't ever want to minimize these stories, because what happens to this girl is fucking horrific. But this story, it makes me think of The Summer I Turned Pretty, because we're going to talk about, this ends up being these two brothers fighting over this girl. And you haven't watched The Summer I Turned Pretty, have you?
No, but I've seen all the clips online, so Taylor, I know what happens.
Taylor, you would love it. You would love it.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. New players, new games, new rules. Squid Game, The Challenge returns for a gripping second season. 456 contestants from all walks of life, competing in the ultimate test of strategy, alliances, and endurance. For a life-changing prize of $4.56 million. With stakes this high, why make friends when you can make millions? Watch Squid Game, The Challenge Season 2, now playing only on Netflix.
You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
Hey there, it's Dr. Sanjay Gupta with some exciting news to share. CNN is now streaming. That means you can read, watch, and stream everything in one subscription. You can watch news live 24/7, You can also explore catch-up videos and explainer videos, and you can also watch a library of CNN's originals, including my latest documentary, It Doesn't Have to Hurt. Just go to cnn.com/all-access.
We all love a legendary comeback, and Degree Original Cool Rush is back and better than ever. Cool Rush isn't just a scent, it's a movement, a fan favorite that delivers bold, fresh vibes and all-day sweat protection. Whether you have a man that spends hours in the gym, heads into the office early, or is just trying to stay fresh on a long day, Cool Rush has their back. Head to your local Walmart or Target and grab Degree Cool Rush, the fan favorite scent from the world's #1 antiperspirant brand.
But in the summer, I turned pretty. I wish you had seen it. Anyone who is listening right now knows exactly what I'm talking about. You guys get it. But Rushton and his wife, Anne, had 7 children together. Taylor, as someone with one child, what do you think having 7 would be like?
The one toddler I have is a lot. Love her to death, but will I be having any more? No. Couldn't imagine having 7.
And the best part of the 7 children is the first 5, from what I could find online, it looks like the first 5 were all 1 year apart from each other. Could you imagine for 5 years, you have like a 3-month break between being pregnant, giving birth, maybe 3 months off, and then you're pregnant again?
Oh, no. I know everyone's experience with like pregnancy and delivery and all that is different, but the body goes through a lot of recovery in that phase.
Not if you just hit it back 5 times in a row.
3 months ain't enough.
That's tough. This is a tough lady. I respect her. She is tough mentally.
Couldn't be me.
Physically, could not be me. Could not
Could
be
not
me.
be me.
So the 7 children are Rushton Jr., John, Stephen, David, Julie, Tommy, and Michael. Not only do they have 7 children, 6 of them are boys. It's got to be a loud household. It's got to be. Now, tragically, Anne died of brain cancer in 1973. This is 2 years before Martha's murder. And this left Rushton to care for all 7 kids on his own. Well, if he was like a normal human being that didn't have a bunch of money, he would have been left to care for all 7 kids on his own. But according to those who knew the family, Rushton was allegedly an alcoholic who was barely ever home and pretty much just left all of the raising of the 7 children to relatives, friends, employees, and live-in tutors that he would hire to live in his house and watch his children while he would be out of town for weeks at a time. So the Skakel house naturally was known for just housing all sorts of rich teen debauchery. There were parties, there was alcohol, there was drugs, privilege, sibling rivalries, everything that you could think of that you would see on a TV show or a movie. That's the way that people talk about this. And Michael Skakel, one of the younger sons, he would later write, quote, "I became a full-blown daily drinking alcoholic by the time I was 13, end quote. He alleged that his father often beat him, and his brother Tommy, who was 2 years older than him, followed in their father's footsteps by, quote, bullying and terrorizing me with my father's tacit consent, end quote. So this story to me, reading about this family, it's one of those things where like 90% of the time, the whole like money doesn't buy happiness. I'm like, money buys freedom, in my opinion. And happiness is a lot easier to have when you have freedom.
Absolutely.
When you have freedom from stress, freedom from a job you hate, all of these things. But like reading about this family in this context, I'm like, the whole money doesn't buy happiness thing fits. Like this does not sound like a happy, healthy family in any way, shape, or form, even though they're incredibly wealthy. They're cousins of the Kennedys. It's like, what more could you want for your family? But it sounds abusive. It sounds like there was drug abuse. It does not sound like a happy family in any way, shape, or form. But with that being said, I can also see how the rich, troubled Kennedy cousin bad boys, 17-year-old Tommy and 15-year-old Michael, could have been incredibly appealing to a 15-year-old girl like Martha. Let me tell you, when I was 15 years old, if you put a rich little bastard in front of me that was drinking, doing drugs, and just a little sad boy, I would have been like, oh, I love him. He's the love of my life. I really would have.
I love that.
And I did some therapy and I've changed. But I feel like that's like a classic teenage thing. It's like you see this in movies and you're like, I can fix this person. I'm going to make them happy. Spoiler alert, you cannot. Can't. The thing is, the boys were just as interested in Martha as she was in them. Martha and her older brother John, and their parents, of course, David and Dorothy, had actually just moved to Belhaven about a year before Martha's death. Martha was kind of seen as like the new interesting girl at school. She was blonde, she was beautiful, she was popular, she was outgoing, she did sports, all of these things. She had an easy time making friends, and it seemed like everybody loved her. Now, just 9 months after she moved to the area from California, she was actually voted the most popular girl at school, like in the school superlatives. Martha's brother John described her as, quote, easy to get along with, upbeat, friendly. Martha was a person who had everything in the world going for her. She was friendly, she was athletic, she was talented in the arts. Everything seemed to come very easily to Martha, end quote. Overall, Martha was a pretty well-behaved kid. She was a normal teenager. She would sneak out occasionally. She missed curfew sometimes, and she was known to drink a beer every once in a while. But she seemed to balance it out well. She got along with her family, she did well in school, and she participated in a lot of extracurricular activities and sports. She would go swimming at the country club that her family was a part of, and she would play tennis as well. Her family, the four of them, they would go play doubles. And there's nothing more rich sounding to me than going to the club to play doubles. That's my goal in life, is like, I want to literally say the sentence and mean it. Ask me what I'm doing this weekend.
Oh, Kelsey, what are you up to this weekend?
Oh, I think me and the family are going to go to the club and play doubles. Right?
Yeah.
I'll work on like the voice.
Yeah.
But I am going to Ariana Grande it. Like, if I get really rich one day, like I win the lottery or something, like I will have a different voice and I will be at the club playing doubles. And me playing doubles is other people playing tennis and me with 2 cocktails, 1 in each hand. That's how I play doubles. Now, according to Dorothy, Martha even had a boyfriend at the time. So
Even had.
She's beautiful. She's blonde. She's the most popular girl in school, and she's got this cute little boyfriend too. And Dorothy told Dorothy is her mother, by the way. She tells the Boston Globe that he would come to the house often, and he seemed like he was a really nice kid. Like, the parents liked him. They would spend a lot of time with him, and things seemed to be going well they were 15 years old. So, like, it feels very serious when you're 15, but it's like, looking back, they're kids. So the weekend before Martha's murder, she had actually stayed out past curfew with this boyfriend, and Dorothy ended up grounding Martha for this. So she was supposed to be grounded the night of October 30th. However, when Mischief Night came around, Martha begged her mom to make an exception. All of her friends were going to go out. This was like a holiday. Please, 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 Mom, please let me go out. And Dorothy obliged. She didn't want her daughter to miss out on like this prime teenage experience, basically. And so she let her go, even though she was grounded. And she just told Martha, like, look, I'm going to let you go, but you better be back before curfew this time. So Martha promised her. She's like, I swear, Mom, I will not be late. And then Martha said goodbye to her family for the very last time. So when she failed to return home by 10:30 or 11 p.m., Dorothy initially assumed that her daughter had simply lost track of time or was somewhere at a friend's, just kind of disobeying orders. According to official court documents, shortly after midnight and with no word from Martha, Dorothy's worry turned into panic. And by around 1:30 a.m., her brother-in-law reportedly sent Martha's brother John out to walk the streets of Bellhaven, just to walk around the neighborhood, looking for Martha, asking anyone he saw on the streets. Meanwhile, Dorothy started calling all of the neighbors, asking who had seen her, who she was with, anything like that. And this included the Skakel family who lived across the street. And it was 18-year-old Julie Skakel who answered the phone at the Skakel house. And she, like everyone else that Dorothy called, said that Martha wasn't there and she didn't know where she was. So Dorothy hangs up at first. She calls other people, but she ends up calling the Skakel house twice more that night. And at one point, Dorothy tells Julie, she's like, nope, I need you to wake Tommy up. I need to talk to Tommy, because she knew that if Martha was hanging out with the Skakel boys, it was probably with Tommy. Tommy was definitely going to be there. And so she wanted to talk to Tommy, even though Julie said, I haven't seen Martha. So according to Julie, she goes and she gets Tommy out of bed to talk to Dorothy on the phone. And Tommy tells Dorothy that Martha was not there and that he had no idea where she could be. After hours of searching and calling, Dorothy decides to call police at 3:45 a.m. to report Martha missing. And officers arrive to take a missing person report in the quiet hours of October 31st. Police conducted a brief canvass of the immediate area, but operated under the assumption that Martha was a teenager. She was probably just out with her friends. She was probably just disobeying her mom's orders. And they just weren't taking it very seriously. This is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in America. It's not a dangerous place for teenagers to be running around at night. They didn't take it seriously, and they should have. Obviously, something horrible happens here, but it's one of those things where they just were like, she's probably fine, right? Let's just not worry about it. We'll find her in the morning, which always bothers me.
There was like a little tidbit I went to put in about like mom. What was mom's name again?
Dorothy. The feeling of panic
when you don't know what's going on with your kid. I didn't take note of things like that before having a kid. And I'm not an easily bothered person. I don't get nervous about stuff like that. But after having a kid, I can't even listen or hear stories about something happened to someone's kid.
Oh, well, you've got about 2 more hours of hearing one.
I can sit through this. But like, if I'm just scrolling through social media and I see something pop up related to a child, I gotta turn it off.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine. Like, I feel a little bit the same, not to the same extent, like, but just having my nephews, just because I've never had kids so close to me, you know what I mean? But I cannot imagine like having kids. And I remember early on in the podcast, we had covered a couple of child cases, and this girl I know, shout out Marie, love you Marie, my best friend's older sister, she was like, Kelsey, I need you to get away from child cases. I love the podcast. I cannot do another one. Like I'm it's gonna kill me. And I was like, okay, you're right. Because she's got a little baby. Well, not a little baby. He's like 13 now, but
it will always be
in my
mind,
it's a little baby. Yeah, it's tough. And it's like 15 years old is still a baby. Still a baby, dude.
Absolutely.
It's horrible. I genuinely can't imagine, because again, it's like living in this super rich neighborhood, mansions. It's like gated community. You think it's going to be safe, and you don't think that that's a community that's accessible to a fucking monster that does something like this to her. Because when we're about to get to what happened to her, how she is found, and this was a fucking monster that did this to her. So on Halloween morning, the search for Martha Moxley ended in tragedy. Around noon on October 31st, a 17-year-old neighbor and a friend, Sheila McGuire, discovered Martha's body beneath the sprawling branches of a pine tree at the back of the Moxley property. It's at a little bit of an angle. But, the police had canvassed this area the night before after Martha was reported missing, and they did not find her on her family's property, which to me sounds like they didn't look very fucking hard. Like, it's not like they have acres and acres of land. It is a big property, but it just sounds like the police did not look for this girl very hard. They didn't even search the family's whole property. That seems a little bit reckless to me. It seems like they made assumptions that like the mom was overreacting. And guess what? The mom wasn't overreacting. So the quiet Bellhaven neighborhood, known for its $1 million homes and its safety, this shattered the illusion of that, nothing bad can happen here, basically. Martha was found laying face down in the grass. Her jeans and underwear were pulled down around her ankles. Her long blonde hair was completely matted with blood. McGuire later said, quote, "It's like your body and your mind are trying not to process what's there," end quote, recalling how she stood, quote, "soaked in tears," end quote, upon finding her friend's body in such brutal circumstances. And I am so sorry to this girl.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hi, it's Eva Longoria, and let's be real. After 40, we should ask for more from our skincare. I swear by Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. With vitamin C, pro-retinol, and hyaluronic acid, it reduces my wrinkles, firms, and brightens. And it's not a procedure. It's just a hard-working moisturizer.
Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. Grab it today in fragrance-free or with SPF 30. Available at your local Walmart.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kan du norsk?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This is fucking horrific, finding something violent like this. And this girl who found her was 17 years old. This changes who you are as a person seeing something like this. I just genuinely cannot imagine. Now, of course, Sheila immediately alerts Martha's family and they all call the police. Investigators soon arrived and surveyed the scene. A pool of blood was found near the driveway, suggesting that Martha had first been attacked there, then dragged roughly 60 to 80 feet across the lawn to the pine tree where she was found. There was a trail of smeared blood and grass fibers that traced her path because the grass was like folded over and all bloodied. Now, near the driveway laid fragments of the murder weapon, a Tony Penna 6-iron golf club. Martha had been beaten so brutally that the club had snapped under the force of the blows. And the golf clubs are called irons. I'm pretty sure this thing's made of iron. Like, how much force does it take to break a fucking iron bar in half?
A lot, I'm assuming.
A lot. So it breaks off, and one jagged end of the club's shaft, this is rough, sorry. One jagged end of the club's shaft, so the end where it was broken and like sharp at the end, was stabbed through Martha's neck, like entirely through her throat, just left inside of her. And the grip end, like where you would normally hold a golf club to swing it, that piece of it was missing. So there were 3 pieces in total. There was one found by the driveway, one found in her neck, and then one piece that was missing of this golf club. Someone brutally beat a 15-year-old girl to death so viciously that a golf club snapped into 3 pieces. And then he stabbed her in the neck with a piece.
My first thought goes to, is the part that is the grip handle, is that missing because they're trying to take DNA?
Well, here's the thing. So this is 1975, so there was no DNA technology back then.
Okay, so yeah. So
but
just
maybe fingerprints. It would, if that's, you would assume that if they're swinging this golf club at her, they're holding probably the grip end to do it. So yeah, that's a really good thought. Like they were probably taking that other piece away because it would have their fingerprints on it. Now, this entire scene just told a story of frenzy and rage. Martha had been bludgeoned and stabbed repeatedly, sustaining massive wounds to her head and neck. Forensic examiners later determined the cause of death was multiple blunt force trauma wounds to the skull and directly to the brain, it sounds like, because they had broken through the skull. Now, though her clothing was disheveled, because remember, her pants and her underwear were around her ankles, the medical examiner found no evidence of sexual assault, leading detectives to suspect that the killer had arranged her clothing deliberately, possibly to mislead investigators into thinking that the crime was sexually motivated. In truth, the brutality suggested raw anger more than lust. So they thought at first, well, maybe they had undressed her like this to make the police think that this was like a rape and this was a random attack of some sort. This was not random. This was like pure anger that someone had at Martha. This was someone who knew her well, that was close to her, and had a rage inside of them for Martha.
But like, from your opinion, like what would be, I'm trying to understand what the point of making it look like a sexual assault would be to the actual perpetrator.
That's a really good question. Personally, I don't know I have a different personal theory on why that was done, why her pants were pulled down, which I'll kind of get to later. But I think at first the police were thinking that they wanted to do whatever they could to make it look like whoever did this was a random person who didn't know Martha. Like they saw her walking down the street, they saw an opportunity, and they wanted to like rape her. And this person didn't understand that they would be able to tell whether or not she had been raped. And that's kind of what the police were thinking at first. Is it seemed staged, the fact that her pants were down around her ankles. I don't know like if that theory of theirs changed, but personally I have a different theory, and we will get to that a little bit later in the story. But that's a really good question. Now, this was supposed to be one of the safest neighborhoods in America, but one officer described the scene as, quote, the work of a psychopath, end quote. And it's important to note that this area, they did not have murders often. This was very, very unusual, especially a murder like this. So the police that investigated this crime, from what I have read, it sounds like they were wildly unprepared. They had no idea what they were doing. There's not a lot of forensic evidence there. I didn't read anything about any fingerprints. There weren't a lot of photographs taken of the scene. They let a ton of people onto the scene and onto the property. And it just seemed like they did not know how to process a crime scene. But again, I think in these cases, at this point, this was 50 years ago now. Sometimes these things just aren't reported on in detail. So maybe I'm missing something, but it kind of sounds like they biffed it a little bit. Like they didn't do a great job.
Biffed it, or like purposefully trying to ruin evidence?
Well, that is a fantastic question, Taylor. I think with the crime scene, it sounds like they biffed it. There is speculation that later on in the investigation that they might have maybe purposefully biffed it a little bit. But I think with the crime scene, before they knew that the Kennedys' cousins were involved, that it was probably just that they biffed it. But yes, great question. You're on the right track. So police immediately begin interviewing witnesses and neighbors, trying to map out Martha's evening. Very quickly, witnesses began telling police that they had seen Martha with the Skakel brothers that night. She and other local teens were at the Skakel house, even sitting in a parked car. I don't know whose car this was or who named it this, but apparently this car that they were seen sitting in was nicknamed the Love Mobile. And it was a fact that I could not leave out.
I'm gonna barf.
Yeah. So they're sitting in a parked car. They're listening to music. This is around 9:30 p.m. Now, accounts of the Skakel house that night painted a picture of wild teenage debauchery, which I'm going to use that word 15 more times because I feel like there's nothing that describes it as well. And the 7 Skakel children were often just pretty much unsupervised. Their dad was out of town all the time. And that night, the only person that they had watching them basically was their new live-in tutor, a guy named Kenneth Littleton. And this was Kenneth Littleton's very first day on the job. Day one, he went to this family's home to be a live-in tutor. He worked at a school as well, but he's the live-in tutor. He moves into this mansion with this really rich family, cousins of the Kennedys. And day one of the friends is murdered. And now he's involved in this murder investigation. So Littleton was 23 years old. He was a recent college graduate, and he was hired to help impose structure and discipline in the household. Instead, his first night was going to plunge him into one of the most infamous murder cases in America.
That's so anxiety-inducing. Could you imagine being 23 years old and your job is to, produce structure and discipline to teenagers?
No, and there's literally 7 teenagers actually, they weren't all teenagers at the time, but all of the kids at this point, I think the youngest one was 13. I think it was 13, 15, 17, 18, 19 that still lived in the house for sure. And then they have a 23-year-old tutor in charge of them. I'm like, who is parenting these children?
I don't think I was really an adult until my mid to late 20s.
But yeah, he's supposed to be there. He's supposed to be disciplining. He's supposed to be large and in charge. And that was tough. He later told investigators that the evening was, quote, out of control. There were teenagers coming and going. There was music blasting. They were all drinking. Alcohol was flowing. And Littleton said that he kind of just kept mostly to himself. He ate dinner with the younger children, and he later watched The French Connection. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's a show or a movie. He watched that on TV before going to bed around 11:30 p.m. Now, when police questioned him later, he said that he saw Tommy inside watching television around 10 p.m., a statement that appeared to bolster Tommy's later alibi. So there are 3 important people's stories that I want you to pay attention to. It is this guy, Kenneth Littleton, the tutor. It is Tommy Skakel, who is 17 years old. And then there's Michael Skakel, who is 15 years old. They all have alibis about where they were. And they don't fully make sense together. So it's important to pay attention to that. Now, according to witnesses, Martha had been very flirtatious with Tommy that evening. One friend saw them, quote, falling together behind a fence near the Skakel's backyard pool. Others recalled her teasing Michael earlier in the evening, perhaps fueling a little bit of a sibling rivalry between the boys. Tommy would later tell police that he and Martha shared a consensual romantic encounter in the driveway before she left around 9:30 p.m. to walk home. He claimed that this was the last time that he saw her alive. Tommy said that the two began fooling around, kissing and engaging in what he described as, quote, mutual petting. Mutual petting? A little bit of mutual petting?
What would mutual petting be?
Feeling each other up. This is very 1975 like terminology, like vocabulary. I think feeling each other up. They're smooching. They're literally in the grass, laying on the grass, smooching and
getting a little handsy.
Getting a little handsy is what he's saying. And he says this is all consensual. Now, he tells police that he and Martha were, quote, lying on the ground making out, end quote, and that she, quote, had her pants partially unbuttoned, end quote, before she got up. Then she said she got up and she said she had to go home. And so she walked off towards her house shortly before 9:30 p.m. He says this is the last time he saw her. And importantly, to clarify his comment about the pants, he says at one point her pants were partially unbuttoned, but no hands, nothing went inside of her pants. And the pants stayed on, all of that. They were getting handsy-feely, whatever, and the pants were unbuttoned at some point, but it stopped there. That was as far as it went, okay? Now, again, this is going to make police look at him a little bit sideways when her pants are later found around her ankles, okay? Right. When they find her like that, police wonder. They're like, okay, well, maybe now that we're hearing this kid's story that the last time she's seen alive, she's fooling around with him and his pants are unbuttoned, maybe this wasn't a staged pants around the ankles thing. Maybe this was a sexual motive. But it was confusing because there was no semen or evidence of sexual assault. Now, the physical state of her clothing and Tommy's admission of intimacy, we'll call it, made him he was a suspect immediately, like pretty much day one. Still, his account remained that this encounter, it was affectionate, it was nonviolent, it was just,
Research that police asked him about her pants?
Or I would assume that they asked... No, I don't know exactly what the questioning was, but from reading about other cases, I assume that they say exactly what happened. He probably was like, we were fooling around. And they're like, what does fooling around mean? We were mutual petting. What is petting? And how far did it go? First base, second base, whatever. I assume that they pushed him into saying her pants were partially unbuttoned. I don't have a transcript or anything of it.
Because my first thought when hearing that is, now I don't know the rest of the story, so I can't speak to that. But when I hear someone saying like, oh, her pants were just partially unbuttoned, to me that feels like adding in a little bit of information to like make yourself seem not guilty. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like saying like, oh,
like if you knew that her pants were found.
Right, like give them a little bit so that they shy away from the rest.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. But I could also see it like, okay, her pants were unbuttoned and it didn't go any further. She then got up and said she had to go home. Was he angry that it didn't go any further? Did Martha deny his advances, and did this send him into a violent rage where he went after her? And then once he had killed her, decided, you know what? You denied my advances. I'll show you. I'm going to leave you with your pants pulled all the way down. Because I think that, to me, this seems like if it wasn't a sexual motive of leaving the pants all the way down or of having the pants down in the first place, it seems like it's almost trying to humiliate her. She's going to be found, clothed from the waist up, but nude from the waist down. And it seems like a way to like humiliate someone possibly.
Now, pardon my language of what I'm going to
Oh, we don't worry about language here, Taylor.
But I'm not a criminal investigator, so I don't really know. But in evidence of like what looks like sexual assault, but if it's consensual, like do things necessarily look the same? Like if a guy doesn't, I don't know, finish?
Well, that's a great question. So, and I am not an investigator. I'm not an ME. I have no medical experience, all of that. This is my understanding as someone who knows nothing. So obviously semen can be one thing. If there's no one that says I had consensual sex with this person and there's semen found inside of them and they're brutally murdered, the assumption is there was a sexual assault. There's also, like, anytime a woman has sex, there is vaginal trauma that occurs. But this is like a spectrum. Like, depending on, sorry to be very blunt about it, depending on the level of lubrication, like, there's going to be a small amount of trauma or maybe a little bit more. And to my understanding, there is a point to where it kind of goes over the cusp of this no longer seems like it's trauma from a lack of lubrication, and this is trauma from a violent encounter. Right. Because if you think of someone who's conscious that's getting sexually assaulted, who's not under the influence of like drugs or anything like that, they're probably going to be fighting this person off, and that's going to lead to a higher level of trauma to the vagina, basically, because they can see it in microscopic tears of the tissue. That is my understanding.
To the opinion of someone that was once a teenage girl, am I going to ever pull my pants down in any way, shape, or form in my parents' front yard?
Well, this property's big, not acres and acres, but I get the impression, and I've seen bird's eye view pictures, I get the impression that you could be at a corner of this yard where you wouldn't be too worried about being seen by your parents at the house.
Okay, so it's a lot bigger than I think it is.
However, when Tommy says that they were fooling around, it was at his house in their yard, not at Martha's. But Martha is found near her yard. And it looks like she had first been attacked in her driveway or near her driveway and then kind of chased into the yard and then dragged. But Tommy says that they were fooling around over at his house. So to me, it's like, well, it's not like he had her pants down and then she walked across the street with her pants down, you know?
I meant like in the assumption, like maybe she was doing something consensual in her front yard.
Right. But I think I could see it as being a possibility that they were doing something consensual in his yard. Because I think the properties look big enough to where, like, they know that his parents aren't home. Like, his mom had passed away. His dad wasn't there. The tutor's 23 years old. Everyone's drunk. It's like a party at this house. I could see them, going into the grass on this huge property. And again, according to Tommy, it didn't go further than like heavy petting or whatever he said it was. So yeah, it's interesting. Now, investigators could not ignore how neatly the pieces seemed to fit. Tommy had been romantically involved with Martha and was the last known person to see her alive. But before drawing conclusions, they also wanted to hear from Tommy's younger brother, 15-year-old Michael. And I want you to remember in all of this, Martha has a boyfriend. There's a guy, I think his name is Peter.
It's not one of the brothers.
It is not one of the brothers. So
different. Okay, so my mind goes to different places then, because in my mind, one of the brothers was the boyfriend.
No, neither of the brothers is the boyfriend. She has a boyfriend. It is not the brothers, okay? But we know, according to Tommy, that they were fooling around. And there were other witnesses that were with them that night saying that they were being like flirty and romantic and whatever. Touchy-feely. So they want to talk to Michael because Michael was hanging out with them that night too. Now, Michael said that around the same time, he left the house. Like, this is around the time that Tommy says that Martha left, okay? Michael says around that same time, he leaves the house with his cousin, Jimmy Terrian, to visit Jimmy's home. This is just like a few miles away. He goes to Jimmy's house. He says that they listened to music, they watched Monty Python, and then he returns home sometime after 11 p.m. He tells police that he left around 9:30ish and got home probably between 11 and 11:30. Now, Jimmy says that Michael stopped by, but he couldn't really recall exactly when. Yeah, it was probably that time, but it wasn't for that long. But I don't remember if it was a little earlier or later. And he was just kind of very vague about the whole thing. And this seemed to leave a time gap during the critical window when Martha was killed, which police believed was between 9:30 and 10 p.m. Now, still, police didn't really see much of a motive for Michael. They're like, okay, his alibi is like pretty shaky, but Tommy was much more involved with Martha than Michael was. So while searching the Skakel home, because police are looking at Tommy seems to be closest to Martha. He's hooking up with her, but Martha has this boyfriend. Martha stopped him while, they were doing this heavy petting. She stops him after he unbuttons her pants or whatever. And so they're starting to zero in on Tommy. And so they go and search the Skakel home, and they find a set of Tony Penna golf clubs. And of course, this set of clubs was missing the 6-iron. So the thought, it's like, okay, well, this is where the murder weapon came from. We have found it. And the thing is, it seems like kind of like they found this smoking gun of like, gotcha, we know who did it now. But Rushton Skakel, the father, he argued that these clubs were left outside all of the time. Like the kids left them outside all the time. And he also said that there were teens in and out of that house all night, which was true. And his claim was anyone could have taken that club. That club could have been grabbed by anyone. Any teenager could have done it. So just the fact that it was one of their golf clubs doesn't mean that it was someone who lived in that house.
Right. Mr. Skakel, reliable alcoholic, is the one that said that.
Yes. But he has a point to a certain extent.
Yes, he does have a point.
He does have a point to a certain extent. It's, with people in and out of the house all night, it is a little bit like someone could have taken it. But at the same time, for police, it just seemed like too many coincidences. Martha was last seen alive at their house, was last seen alive with Tommy, had this romantic thing with Tommy, and then was killed with one of their golf clubs. They felt pretty certain that someone from the Skakel home was responsible for this, and likely one of the Skakel boys that had been with Martha that night. And they somewhat questioned which one, because Michael didn't really have a solid alibi, but really they felt like Tommy's romantically connected. So with the crime scene muddled, they didn't have a lot of forensic evidence to guide them. So where they went next, is interviewing all of the witnesses, but pretty much their goal was to find the motive. Why would someone kill Martha? And if it was one of the Skakel boys, like they believed, why would one of them want to kill Martha? And that's why they started leaning towards Tommy, is because, well, they were like getting intimate. That seems like it could have led to a motive of some sort. So in the days that followed the murder, police sought deeper insights into Martha's relationships and behavior, hoping that it might bring some answers. During their search of the Moxley home, they discovered her handwritten journals, which provided intimate glimpses into her teenage life and became crucial to understanding her social circle and her relationship with Tommy and Michael. Reading these journal entries that I'm about to read you, to me, it's so obvious what is happening with these two Skakel boys, but you can tell to Martha, it's not obvious to her. She doesn't understand what's happening here.
She's just 15.
I'm interested to hear like your thoughts on these. So she writes on September 12th, 1975. So remember, she dies October 30th. She writes, quote, "Dear Diary, today was nothing extra special at school. Peter was being his usual self." Remember, that's her boyfriend, Peter. Peter was being his usual self. Me, Jackie, Michael, Tom, Hope, Maureen, and Andra went driving in Tom's car. I drove a little, and then I was practically sitting on Tom's lap because I was only steering. He kept putting his hand on my knee. I drove some more, and Margie and I kept yelling out the sunroof. And then we went to Friendly's, and Michael treated me, and he got me a double, but I only wanted a single, so I threw the top scoop out the window.
Not got me a double, but I wanted a single.
Dude.
Sorry.
And remember, Tommy's driving. He's sitting on her lap. Tommy's hand is on her knee. Then Michael gets her a double scoop, but she only wanted a single. Then she throws away the top scoop.
Rude.
She says, then I was driving again, and Tom put his arm around me. He kept doing stuff like that. Jesus, if Peter ever found out, I would be dead. I think Jackie really likes Michael, and I think that maybe he likes her, or maybe because he was drunk, but I don't know. And that's the end of the...
She actually wrote, I would be dead if Peter found out that...
Yes, but spoiler, Peter had nothing to do with this. I'll spoil that for you right now. Peter didn't have anything to do with this. Like, we don't hear much about Peter. Poor Peter. Could you imagine your high school boyfriend or girlfriend gets murdered and then you learn all of this?
Right.
That's
distress.
Tough. That's tough for a teenage boy.
Optimism isn't sunshine and rainbows. It's fixing things, changing the way we fix things. It's running the world on smarter energy. Because if optimism never stops, then change can't either. GE Vernova, the energy of change.
So September 15th, so this is just a couple days later, 1975, she writes about hanging out in an RV with Jackie and Michael. Remember, in the last passage, she just said, Jackie really likes Michael. I don't know if Michael likes her. I think maybe he does, or maybe he's just drunk. I don't know. So she says that they hang out in this RV, and later Michael told her, quote, he doesn't like Jackie, but he leads her on so much I can't believe it, end quote. Just a few days later, she writes, quote, Michael was so totally out of it that he was being a real asshole in his actions and words. Pause quote there. The way that she put this, I'm like, this is the sweetest, most like emotionally smart young woman. She said, the way he was being a real asshole in his actions and words. I'm like, that like breaks my heart, because this seems like this was her biggest fucking worry in the world.
Yeah, tell me you're a teen without telling me.
Yeah. So she continues, she says, he kept telling me that I was leading Tom on when I don't like him except as a friend. I said, well, how about you and Jackie? You keep telling me that you don't like her and you're all over her. He doesn't understand that he can be nice to her without hanging all over her. Michael jumps to conclusions. I can't be friends with Tom just because I talk to him. It doesn't mean I like him. I really have to stop going over there. The point that I wanted to get across to Taylor is in these journal entries, she's talking about all these little like flirtations with her and Tommy, the older brother. He's putting his arm around her. She's sitting on his lap and she's like, Jesus, if Peter ever found out, like he'd kill me, whatever. And there's all these little mentions of Michael. It's like, well, oh, Michael bought me a double scoop, and then Michael's being a real asshole today, and all of these things. I get the impression she has no idea why Michael's being such a little asshole to her. He's telling her, oh, you're leading Tommy on, but you don't even like him, and all of this stuff. It seems very obvious to me that Michael likes Martha, and he's very jealous because Martha likes the older brother, Tommy. She wrote, Michael was so totally out of it that he was being a real asshole in his actions and words. And she's the whole time talking about, well, Jackie likes Michael, but Michael doesn't like her back, like all of this stuff, and Jackie's her friend. We're starting to learn that it's not just because up until this point, before they get the diary, police think that it's just Martha and Tommy, you know, were cheating on Martha's boyfriend or whatever. They don't know that there's anything with Michael. But they start to read this and they're like, well, it kind of seems like Michael was a little jelly belly. And yeah. So then October 4th, she writes in the diary, quote, I went to a party. Tom S. was being an ass. At the dance, he kept putting his arms around me and making moves, end quote. Which she's saying he's being an ass, but it sounds like she likes him. Okay.
Yes. She's got the feels for Tommy.
She's got the feels for Tommy, for sure. It seemed that she was expressing an affection for Tommy. She wrote that she was, quote, starting to really like him, end quote, while also confiding frustration with Michael, whom she painted as moody, jealous, and sometimes mean to her. The journals gave investigators a potential motive rooted in jealousy or rejection. So at first they had been looking at Tommy. They felt like Tommy was feeling rejected because Martha, you know, stopped him from doing whatever he was going to do. But now they're looking at, well, maybe this was Michael feeling rejected by Martha because she was picking his older brother over him. Now, this, combined with the murder weapon's origin, suspicion again centered squarely on the Skakel household. Only now it was divided. They felt like they were a little bit less sure about which brother was involved in this. So as the police pressed on, their focus rotated between the two brothers, but also their tutor, Kenneth Littleton. So Tommy was the last person to see Martha alive. So he is probably number one on the list. But Michael, he maintained he was at his cousin's home for about 2 hours. But the cousin's like, I don't really know if he was here the whole time. He stopped by. I saw him, but I don't know for how long. I don't remember. You know, it was very shaky alibi. And he became defensive under questioning. But he continued to deny any involvement. Littleton, on the other hand, he's not related by blood. But he lived in the Skakel home. He had access to those golf clubs, and he quickly found himself under immense pressure as well. Detectives noted inconsistencies in his recollection of the timeline, particularly when he went to bed, and he seemed to have a very nervous demeanor every single time that they talked to him. At one point, they asked him to take a polygraph, and he agreed. Taylor, if you were being accused of a murder and you did not do it, you know nothing about it, and they asked you to take a polygraph, would you do it?
Yes. But I understand the inaccuracies of a polygraph.
See, I would say no. But I wouldn't do it.
Hold on. If the idea of me saying no, that looks guilty to me.
Yes, but
being like, oh, well, you take a lie detector test? No. Okay, sounds like you're lying.
But you know what looks more guilty? You taking a polygraph and it being, yes, I did it.
That's where I was going next. And being like, okay, but I understand the fact that a polygraph is completely inaccurate.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think they always are, but I wouldn't do it, dude.
Look, I walk into a patient's room and their heart rate goes up just because of the fact that they see me. It's called white coat syndrome.
You have that effect on people, Taylor.
No, it's not. Have you ever heard of like white coat syndrome? It's a real thing.
No, I don't know what that is.
Believe it. It is when you see a healthcare worker where you get anxious and your heart rate and your vitals go up and go
really?
like out of. It's completely real. Happens all the time in my job. White coat syndrome is a thing. So I understand the fact that if you're anxious, the police are investigating you. They're like, let's take a polygraph. They hook you up to these machines. Your heart rate goes crazy when they're asking you questions and it looks like you're lying.
Yeah. See, that's why I'm too much of a nervous freak. Like,
exactly.
I would not be able
to baseline to like get it from.
Yeah, I would not take it.
But I mean, how it could be inaccurate.
Of course, it's very inaccurate.
But you would do it anyway?
Because I feel like you look guilty if you say no.
No, see, now you can be like, look, my friend has a true crime podcast and she told me not to do it. So he fails this polygraph. There are some like reports that I read saying that it was inconclusive and then others said it. All I know is he did not pass it. We'll put it that way. It was like 50-50 on if he failed or if it was inconclusive. But for the police, this seemed to deepen their suspicions of if he was involved in this. And police said later, they told the press, quote, he was not truthful in answering any of the key questions, end quote. Now, a neighbor of the Skakels even told police that they needed to look very closely at Littleton, as the teens had been spreading a rumor that underneath Littleton's bed in the Skakel household, he kept nudie magazines. So obviously the guy is a murderer, but this is like very conservative.
This is a 23-year-old male.
Yeah, this is a 23-year-old boy, and he had nudie magazines under his bed. You guys should see the look on Taylor's husband's face. His name is Eric because we're gonna have to just give him a mic, dude. Yeah, so there's, people are saying in this neighborhood, which by the way, again, the night that Martha was murdered was his first day working at the Skakel house. So how these people are saying, oh, we all knew that he, he's kind of weird. Like they're all telling police like to look at this guy because he's kind of weird. They had known him for a day. I don't understand how they would think he was that weird, but maybe he just really made a horrible first impression. The other part of this was he was the only adult in the home that evening, and he was just letting all of these teens drink in the house. So that's not a great look to the police. And prior to his job at the Skakel home, he hadn't exactly walked the straight and narrow. The year before Martha's murder, he had been arrested on multiple burglary charges. People who knew him, even before he worked at the Skakel house, this is not just the neighbors, these are people from his life, also described him as very strange. And after the police told the school that Littleton worked at the Skakel house, but he also had a job at some school, the police go to the school to talk to them, and they mention his prior arrests. And after this, he's fired because they didn't know about those arrests. So he's fired. And it's said that after he's fired because of this, he had multiple mental and alcoholic breakdowns. Now, his mother later told reporters that their, quote, family is ruined over this. My son became an alcoholic. His brain was nothing. He couldn't get a job. My husband and I were at each other's throats over what we should do. I'm so bitter. We were so naive. We're poor people, my husband and I. We don't have the money that they do to protect ourselves. They're probably just going on with their lives as though nothing happened, end quote. And of course, she's comparing their family to the Skakel family, who's like multimillionaires, and he was an employee in their house. And in the beginning, he was pointed to as possibly being the person who did this as much as the two Skakel boys were. Kind of sounds like it ruined this guy's life. I don't personally believe that this guy had anything to do with it. There are people, though, out there that still like theorize that it was this guy. There's no evidence.
I mean, from the perspective of like, I am 23 years old. I'm a teacher. I was hired into this rich family's household. Like, I work for the family. You can say all you want to, like, oh, I work for the parent, like,
the
kind of thing.
The
but
dad's not he's
right.
not even there.
So to say, like, oh, these kids are used to running amok and doing what they please. I get hired in. I'm supposed to tell them at 23 years, like, oh, you have to change your lifestyle and you can't be doing these things anymore. Sounds like he works for the kids.
Yeah, that's my impression is he works for the kids and he knows it. And he's like, all right, you guys are running around drinking. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't think this guy had anything to do with it. There's just pretty much other than what I just told you, I couldn't find anything crazy about this guy. Like, the worst thing that I read about him is he had burglarized some people's homes. Now, RFK Jr. himself, a staunch defender of his cousin's innocence, would later write an opinion piece for The Atlantic, claiming that there was more evidence against Littleton than there was against his cousins. He also goes on to write an entire book about the case, but we'll get there. Actually, he wrote 2 books about it. So we'll get to those, because those don't happen for another couple decades. Even with 3 suspects, what happened to Martha seemed very obvious, yet so mysterious at the same time. Someone had followed her after she left the Skakel house, bringing the 6-iron club with them, and they beat her to death. They knew what, they knew how, they knew when, and they knew where. But they still couldn't be sure who did this to her. Littleton, Tommy, and Michael all had very rocky alibis. Tommy and Michael seemed to have some sort of motive, maybe, but it was also a little bit of a stretch with what they knew. Littleton didn't really seem to have a motive, but he was also more seen as the type of person who would do something like this compared to these like rich, wealthy, young teenage boys, whatever. So with no forensic evidence to go on, by early January 1976, the case had stalled. Rushton Skakel, who was initially cooperative, had grown very hostile to law enforcement inquiries. He refused further interviews for his sons, and he was no longer letting them search without warrants. Refusal to comply effectively halted the investigation's momentum. The combination of inconclusive forensic evidence, shifting alibis, and lack of cooperation left police without a clear path forward. It would be nearly 25 years before an arrest was made in Martha's case in January of 2000. And that is where we are going to leave it off for today's episode. But next week, we're going to dive deep into the events over those next 25 years leading up to the arrest, and then pretty much the next 20 years after that, because we're going to talk about a trial, a conviction, an acquittal, a retrial, another conviction, another acquittal, and a review of that acquittal, and everything that comes after. But Taylor's going to hear the rest in about 8 minutes, and the rest of you guys are going to have to wait until next week. So, yeah, I don't know how to leave it off.
That was
anymore.
a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And normally we end it by saying, court is adjourned.
Court is adjourned.